Over the years, more and more localizers have been caught for corruption, where instead of doing their job, they abuse their position by altering translations in ways that they shouldn't, specifically to push very specific worldviews and political views that they have. This is, of course, highly disrespectful to the creators and everyone involved with creating the IP, or intellectual property, as well as the fans. This sort of very odd corruption that we've seen from localizers at times are even applied to things as simple as jokes, where, for example, Trails of Cold Steel 3 localizers on a Twitch stream outright said that they will change the context of jokes when localizing from Japanese to English, because according to them, those same Japanese jokes are too offensive for Western audiences. Another one of the most notable examples of corruption by localizers, and the more recent one too, was what occurred to the manga I Think I Turned My Childhood Friend Into a Girl, and the publishing company 7 Seas Entertainment. The manga is essentially about two guys, where one has a love for cosmetics, and a close guy friend of his agrees to let him apply makeup on him. This causes that friend to embrace his femme side, and a relationship of sorts develops between the two guys. However, the 7 Seas edition of this manga had localizers abusing the intellectual property by changing the more femboy character into a trans character. This sparking massive backlash for how much it altered the story, and eventually the intellectual property holders even had negotiations with 7 Seas to fix this error, to which 7 Seas issued this statement. In response to fan concerns, 7 Seas has thoroughly reviewed our English language translation of I Think I Turned My Childhood Friend Into a Girl Volume 1. The subject matter in this book is delicate, and we took every effort to keep the language respectful and inclusive. However, after discussing the matter with the rights holders, we realized that our edition differs in certain details from the author's intent. With that in mind, we will be revising the English script of this series to address various concerns and more accurately reflect the original intent of the creator. This revised translation will be available in reprints of Volume 1, and the translation for future volumes will be handled by a collaborative translation team to ensure a faithful and accurate translation of the original work. We're sorry for any confusion or stress caused by our first printing of Volume 1, and we thank you for your passion as we bring this complex and wonderful manga series to English-speaking audiences. That response, however, was still met with a lot of criticism and skepticism from people who essentially say that these sort of bad localizations have been a recurring issue from 7 Seas, and they question how sincere they are in assuring people that they won't happen again. All of this led to a number of localizers taking to social media to insult 7 Seas, the original IP holders, as well as the fans for giving backlash to their butchered localization. Many localizers defending the terrible localization and saying that they were in the right for making that character trans, even when the literal creators disagreed. One of the most infamous examples of this was a localizer known as Katrina, who issued this statement in response to the terrible localization being fixed. I know the translator and they've done their homework on this series, reading future volumes, consulting with trans people, and working hard to make sure it's as accurate as possible. Shame on those listening to one rando and trashing it. I fully support this translator. Yeah, well, for the record, the backlash wasn't quote-unquote one rando. Now, there was a ton of backlash to that awful localization all over Twitter, all over Reddit, all over YouTube, etc., etc. You get the point. Anyways, with that context, and keep in mind there's plenty more examples of terrible localizations out there, and more people becoming aware of the corruption in the localization industry, there's been a recent meme of sorts, where people say that they would even rather have AI translations over the sort of butchered localizations that have been going on. So thanks for your patience in getting all of this context. And now with this context, let's move on over to today's news. ANN had said, the Ancient Magus Bride manga returns with simultaneous English releases through AI translation. And the top responses to that tweet showing a bit of mixed reception, so to speak, with some hating that concept and others celebrating it. The news about AI translations also seemingly leading to this tweet with over 4,000 likes from Chibi Reviews, who says, scroll a little more here, there we go, hot take, agenda pushing has no place in translations for anything. When you change the work to fit your narrative, you shouldn't be a translator. As much as I hate AI translations becoming popular, it makes sense why people are fine with it because of agenda pushing translators. Showing an example here from Rayforce Game, the one and only, who says, as a Japanese, I can testify manga version translation is more correct than anime version. There's no gender-related term in Japanese original text. Therefore, quote-unquote mansplaining is a mistranslation. I suspect someone inserted their own political agenda into this mistranslation. And we can see this example here, where on the right it says, "Did I just give my bizarre take on," gets cut off. And on the left gets changed to, "What? Did I just start mansplaining fashion to a literal pro model?" And if you're curious, while we were scrolling by the other pictures, we got this set of the two pictures and this one here. The reason this has some Japanese text on it is because presumably this was from Rayforth's game. Like, he added this so that his Japanese audience could understand what was being discussed here. At the very top is this response by Red Logic, which reads, "I agree, except that's not why companies are using AI. It's because it saves them money. I haven't seen any agenda pushing in One Piece or Dragon Ball Super." It's a reasonable assessment. To be fair, pretty much any time a company makes a decision, it ultimately does go back to the bottom line, or money, to keep it simple. Still, as we've seen with the 7C situation, butchered localizations can negatively impact the bottom line by resulting in a loss of goodwill, and even causing reprints to be needed. That said, such potential situations may still just be a sub-factor and not the main factor, which indeed might be more directed at cutting costs regarding labor. And as presented at the very top by Mythoth, tweet reads, "Completely true. But the problem is that no one is willing to defend your job from being taken by AI for cost cutting if there are multiple cases of people in your field purposely doing it wrong on purpose." And that sort of take is likely going to be a very common position, where people are not going to defend the localizers from potentially losing their jobs to AI because of how corrupt that industry is. We've got two examples of that right here, with the tweet on top reading, "Correct, and I feel for the people who do the well and right, but end up being overshadowed by the bad actors." And below reading, "Yep, as far as I'm concerned, localizers are indefensible, and I'd prefer AI translations over their shoddy agenda-fixated work. I'm sick to death of series being butchered all across the spectrum." However, conversely, Chibi also got responses like this one, and it is important to take a look at this tweet, as this is rhetoric that has been used to try and defend corrupt localizers in the past. The tweet reading, "I don't think translators are actively trying to push an agenda. If anything, there's some stuff in Japanese that doesn't translate well into English, so they gotta do with what they can." While it is true that some things just don't translate well from Japanese to English simply because of the nature of the two languages, that doesn't excuse the fact that localizers have been caught time and time again altering the context of material, not because it doesn't translate well, but because they personally decided to alter it, such as the examples provided earlier in this video. So the discourse around these AI translations has been quite a hot topic over the last 24 hours or so, and Magus Bride's Twitter account themselves actually issued this official statement, which reads, "To clarify misinformation that has been spread, I would like to provide some additional information. Firstly, regarding AI-assisted translation, we have implemented a system from Mantra Corporation. This system combines their unique machine translation technology with the editing and proofreading by professional translators. Next, about the purpose of simulcast distribution. Unofficial translations are sometimes released for free and circulate as quote-unquote pirated versions. Illegal manga piracy sites that publish these cause serious harm to the manga culture and industry, both domestically and internationally. The ancient Magus Bride has also continually suffered from such damages. Initiatives like the one we are undertaking now have been proven effective in reducing piracy damage, as demonstrated by precedent cases with Shueisha's works. Finally, regarding books produced and licensed officially by foreign publishers, if there are any offers from various companies, they will continue to be considered, and if conditions are met, publications will proceed as before. This situation remains unchanged. Thank you." Once again, duality in the comments, with some responses pointing out seething localizers in the comments and supporting the AI, supporting the robots, and a comment right below that pointing out inaccurate translations and corruption in the localization industry, essentially, and supporting the AI translations. And right below that, you have Kaiser Neko seemingly disagreeing with the use of AI translations on any level, saying just stop. And a response from Mother's Basement also seemingly criticizing the use of AI translations and instead continuing to suggest that they just use localizers to translate everything directly. A different response, however, reading, "American localizers have to learn to respect source material and don't delusionally attempt quote-unquote improving works they translate. Ignore their screeching and complaints. A machine's work is far better than cringe and propaganda-laced vomit that those people pretend is a quote-unquote translation." So you've got the context to this stuff, you've seen the recent news, and also some varied opinions on it all. One thing that still seems a bit confusing, however, is how often the pro-localizers seem to ignore the very real issues with corruption in the localization industry. They never seem to acknowledge it, or they attempt to gaslight people into thinking it doesn't actually exist when it very much so does. It would be a better, more honest approach if they also acknowledged the corruption in the localization industry and tried to find ways to remedy that on top of their attempts to stop AI translations. Anyways, that's all of the main stuff for this topic, so I'll close the segment out here. As always, thank you so much for your time, and consider letting me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and or subscribing. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.